When I first started researching this bill, I looked at it on a surface level. I looked at the benefits of increased composting. I looked at the benefits to farmers and their animals. I looked at the increased revenue that it would cause. And I also looked at the benefits and drawbacks for just everyday people living in Burlington and surrounding areas. What I didn't realize, though, was that this bill had much deeper social and economic implications. The ties that run through this bill really make you question, what is our society today and what do we want to move towards? What kind of economic system have we built and how is that ruining our society? Where do we stand and where do we want to stand? These questions are all incredibly important, especially concerning this bill. Bill 489 was introduced by Representative Gannon of Wilmington as an act relating to the use of food residuals in farming operations. This bill proposes to permit farms to transport, accept, and use food residuals for the management and feeding of poultry without first obtaining a solid waste facility certification or a solid waste commercial hauler permit. The last known action recorded on this bill was on Thursday, February 28, 2019, and was the bill being referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Forestry. Organic waste is a natural waste that comes from plants and animals, and this can include grass clippings, biodegradable plastics, food scraps, manure, biodegradable carbon, etc. The breakdown of process of foods and organic scraps in landfills happens anaerobically, meaning without oxygen. This causes the foods to release methane as they break down. Methane is one of the most serious and potent greenhouse gases, as it is about 30 times more potent than carbon dioxide. About 1.5% of anthropogenic emissions come from anaerobic fermentation. Although this may seem like a minuscule amount, working to reduce these emissions through more efficient and stable compost systems will be highly beneficial. Any positive action is better than no action at all. In 2018, Vermont produced over 100,000 tons of organic waste, and a majority of this went to the landfill. Within this 100,000 tons, over 60,000 pounds of this was composed of food scraps and other food waste. On the surface level, House Bill 489 will reduce the amount of organic waste going into the landfill, improving the health of the planet, and provide alternative revenue sources for farmers. Composting through chickens is also an excellent way for the health of the chickens to improve and to reduce costs for farmers, so it's a win-win both ways. To get a broader perspective on the bill, I reached out to Kurt Erickson, the general manager at the Vermont Compost Company. During our phone interview, he described Vermont Compost Company's current composting system, how the bill will benefit small farmers and haulers, and actions that have been taken so far through the Poultry Farmers for Compost Foraging Group, a group that is working towards getting Bill 489 through legislature. The composting company currently uses a system that incorporates food scraps, horse manure, cow manure, forest materials, etc., which all get put into a feeding area for the laying hens. They have about 700 laying hens that forage on the material and continue to add to it. When the material is ready, it gets pulled out and gets turned into a windrow composting system. We then discussed the benefits of the bill for both small farmers and food scrap haulers. The following clip is an excerpt from our phone interview. Do you think that if the bill is passed that it'll help small farmers in the area, or what do you think the main benefit of the bill would be?
Yes, I think there's a bunch of farms that it would benefit. The other people that it benefits would be the food scrap haulers. We have, are you familiar with Act 148?
No, not really.
Okay, so Act 148 is this law that Vermont, I think it was 2012 that they passed, and essentially the goal is by the year 2020, all food scraps in the state of Vermont will be diverted from the landfill.
Right.
And then from the landfill, there's a hierarchy that they go to support, so first you don't overproduce. The next step is you take any food that you can and feed people with it. The third tier is diverted for agricultural use or the consumption by animals. But so now the state is generating all of this material, and a lot of these small farms provide an outlet to the people that are managing it. Because if you don't have the small farms, then some of these haulers might have to drive 2 hours to take it to a transfer station.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a whole community benefit in terms of managing the resource. And then the benefit to the farmer is that, the number one expense in egg production is the cost of grain.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to take this resource that the community is trying to keep out of the landfill and put to another use, the farmer can take that, repackage it into providing nourishment for their laying hens, and produce eggs for the community.
Right.
So in terms of a business viability component, there's a lot of benefit there too. And then the egg production for the community is another big thing as well.
After discussing the benefits of the bill, Kurt moved into explaining the importance of the bill and why it was developed.
Essentially, because the position that the state had taken, and actually both the Agency of Agriculture and DEC had issued rulings on this concern. I guess it was back in 2007. They had already said, "Hey, this is not solid waste management. This is farming. So you don't need a solid waste permit." But kind of what led to the current issue is that both agencies reversed their policy stance on that. And so now the Agency of Agriculture is saying that this is not farming, even though we are raising chickens on this material.
Mm-hmm.
And DEC is saying, well, if it's not farming, then you have to have a solid waste permit.
After talking to Kurt, I decided to dig a little deeper into the agency's change of policy. To do so, I reached out to Tom Gilbert, who owns and runs Black Dirt Farm alongside his family. Tom started from the very beginning, from the legislative point of view, explaining how in 1987 the Vermont legislature passed Act 78, which is very similar to, however much vaguer than, the current universal recycling law. This act opted for voluntary implementation instead of mandatory, and basically ended up being a plea to the private sector to change their habits to follow Act 78. This resulted in Vermont missing its goal of reducing recyclables in the landfill by 50%, and highlights the major flaw in economic theory that markets will correct themselves.
The idea that markets will correct themselves for social or ecological factors is totally naive, baseless. We have just zero precedent for that. And so the idea that even remains part of the narrative that, let the markets figure it out, it's just, I don't really understand where it comes from. And every time we try these things, they fall on their faces.
After Act 78 failed, Vermont legislature created the Universal Recycling Law, which contained the Vermont Food Recovery Hierarchy.
Within the URL, there's the Organics Management Hierarchy, and it's probably one of the coolest parts of any legislation in the country right now, just in its simplicity of establishing, a social contract, something that says, hey, listen, regardless of how the market places value on these things, we believe it is more important to feed your neighbors that are food insecure than it is to make electricity.
However, while this act was being written, major concerns were brewing.
Those of us that were working on the organics portion of the Universal Recycling Law were concerned that still the way the URL was being written, even though it was a mandate, it was not expressing any discretion as to how to ensure that the real underlying social and ecological factors were being addressed.
Then, reinforcing these concerns, a huge blow was dealt when the hierarchy was completely gutted.
Even though the URL itself was a recognition that the market failed and we needed legislative fix, within it, all the sort of subsections still rely on the market. And while the organics piece was sort of designed to not rely on the market to determine where things went, it just got gutted, and so now we're back to sort of relying on the market again to tell us the best way to use these things. And what that's definitely resulting in and going to be perpetuated is not just undermining, say, food rescue, which is going to be one part of it, but it's also undermining feeding poultry, which is connecting to the bill you're looking at, and it's also undermining soil health and addressing issues of plastics and emissions.
The source separation provision was also weakened, so now instead of contaminants being separated from organics at the point of generation, they can be separated along any part of the stream. This has caused a shift towards a mechanized sorting process, resulting in the contamination of the organic materials going to farms.
So here we are, like, looking this thing in the face and knowingly contaminating that material with plastics going into food-producing soils.
After explaining the issues with Bill 489 from the legislative side, Tom began to explain the issues from the poultry farmer perspective. He began with a court challenge surrounding the Vermont Compost Company in 2006 and 2007, which established a lot of legal determinations that set precedents for the future. The most important was that the Attorney General's office, on behalf of the Agency of Agriculture and the Agency of Natural Resources, combined with Act 250, made the determination that the food scraps going to poultry farms were not solid waste but feed, so therefore those operations utilizing that organic matter were farms. This train of thought sustained for 10 years until 2017. In 2017, farms that were utilizing this system were notified that they no longer had farm status, including Black Dirt Farm. This is a huge problem because
we've now built businesses around, previous interpretations. It feels a little insulting for them to, like, really without any consultation, reprieve, anything, just kind of come in and just pull the rug out from under us.
After highlighting this issue, Tom explained that it wasn't really a legislative issue, as none of the farmers had any problem with the system before the agencies changed their interpretation of the rules.
We don't feel like there's even a legislative fix that's really required. Like, nobody had a problem with this before. There was no legal change. There was no legislative precedent set. There's no sort of just cause established. And as far as we can tell, it's just sort of a budget battle behind the scenes between two agencies.
During a court testimony, a state agent pulled Tom aside and told him,
"Just so you know, we actually don't mind having you guys in farming, and we're actually cool with it. We just need ANR to give up one of their FTEs, one full-time position, basically, so we can regulate you." And essentially, he was, like, telling me, like, help us get that position and we'll get out of your way.
Right. Leading to the poultry farms being affected to the thought that, in Tom's words,
how the fuck is it work that we're legitimately getting caught in a budget crossfire between two agencies? That's the only time anybody's ever said that to me. I don't know if that's true, but, like, none of their other lines of reasoning have panned out. So we're sort of reaching for straws right now.
Right. This has led to a group of farms working with the organization Rural Vermont, who has
spent some time, reviewed the issues, and determined that they thought it was concerning and had bigger ramifications, and so they've been amazingly supportive and have jumped in and basically staffed it.
Not only have the changes in interpretations been incredibly detrimental and frustrating to all of the farmers involved, it also opens up fundamental questions about what it means to be a society and how we conduct ourselves. Do our governing bodies value budgets over the lives and incomes of hard-working citizens? How do we change our economic system to better benefit our needs? How do we get the economic and governmental systems to work for us, instead of we the citizens working for them?
To me, the thing about this is that it really opens up some fundamental questions about kind of what it means to be a society.
Yeah.
And are important points for people to be raking through right now as we sort of face some pretty big issues like global warming.
In the end, I encourage you to write, email, or call the head of the Vermont Agency of Agriculture and Forestry, urging them to pass Bill 489 through committee. Farms, livelihoods, and the health of our state and planet are on the line. On a larger scale, I also encourage you to look at this issue from a global perspective. This is more than just one bill affecting the state of Vermont. The life cycle of this bill reflects some of the major problems that, as a society, we face today. It highlights how our economic system oftentimes drives governmental decisions and, in the process, causes our government to completely ignore the thoughts of the citizens being affected. This results in citizens and their needs being pushed to the side and essentially ignored for the personal economic benefit of higher powers. I urge you to think about this system and what it means for our future and how, as Tom stated, this applies to more pressing issues such as climate change.